Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. What if one letter could change millions of people's lives? Tonight, Johnny Depp tells a secret from his past that will surprise you. Don't miss this amazing moment. New York City stays busy through the night and never really sleeps. But on some nights, it gets quiet enough for something special to happen. On this night, the air felt like winter was coming, and the big building at 30 Rockefeller Plaza lit up like a bright light in the dark. Inside Studio 6B, where The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon happens, everyone was getting ready for the show. Workers ran around doing final checks on equipment. Cameras moved on tracks by themselves, and the people watching got excited. The house lights blinked like they always do. Everything was ready. But no one, not Jimmy, not the people who make the show, not the people watching at home, knew this episode would become one of the most special moments in late-night TV history. The guest was Johnny Depp, who was booked weeks before to talk about a small movie called Still Life. It was a quiet movie about losing things and finding them again. Very different from the big action movies he used to make. No explosions, no pirates with swords, just a thoughtful story about a character. His team didn't think it would be a big deal, and neither did he. Johnny didn't come on the show just to sell his movie. He hadn't done talk shows just for promotion in years. He came because he knew how powerful it is when people connect with each other, and because something heavy in his heart needed to be said, even though he wasn't sure what it was yet. Backstage, Johnny sat in a small green room, drinking black coffee. He wore a loose black jacket over an old band t-shirt, dark jeans, and scuffed boots that looked like he'd walked many miles in them. A few silver rings sparkled on his fingers, and his favorite hat sat on the table next to him. He wasn't nervous. Johnny Depp doesn't get nervous about interviews, but tonight felt different. Hidden in his jacket pocket was a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a script or notes about the movie, but a letter he wrote 6 months ago. It had been sent back to him without being opened. It was written to someone who wouldn't be watching the show, someone who couldn't. On the other side of the wall, Jimmy Fallon was getting the audience excited. His happy energy spread to everyone as he joked with the crew and looked through note cards he probably wouldn't use anyway. The audience loved him. People knew his name meant fun, with lip-sync battles and funny skits with famous people. But underneath his happy personality, Jimmy had his own sad thoughts that few people knew about. Tonight, those sad thoughts would meet Johnny's in a way no one could have planned. The show started like always. Laughter, clapping, a funny opening speech. Jimmy danced onto the stage, made jokes about the news, and the crowd cheered loudly. The first part flew by, followed by a short music preview. Then Jimmy turned to the camera with his famous smile. Our last guest tonight, man, I love this guy. You love him too. He's been part of our lives for decades and somehow just keeps getting cooler. He's here to talk about his new movie, Still Life. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Johnny Depp. The clapping was really loud. Johnny walked out with his usual cool charm, giving a small wave to the crowd, then nodding to Jimmy, who greeted him with a warm handshake and said excitedly, "You're the man." Johnny smiled a little, his eyes warm but far away. They sat down across from each other, surrounded by blue curtains and stage lights. "Man, I'm so excited you're here," Jimmy said, leaning forward. "The internet's been talking about this movie." Johnny nodded slightly. "It's a quiet one, not the kind of movie that goes viral." "That's what I love about it," Jimmy replied. "It's raw, real. You play this character who loses everything and then just starts walking one day. No map, like Forrest Gump, but, sadder." The joke made a few people laugh. Johnny didn't laugh. He tilted his head, a gesture that meant he was about to say something that might not fit a regular talk show. "I think," he began slowly, "we all start walking at some point. Some of us just don't realize it until we've already left everything behind." Jimmy looked surprised. The audience, sensing something was changing, got quiet. Johnny looked at them, then back to Jimmy. "Can I tell you something that's not part of the usual talk show thing?" Jimmy, who was good at going with the flow, gave a careful smile. "Yeah, man, sure." Johnny reached into his jacket and pulled out the letter. He unfolded it carefully, as if it might break, and began to speak. Not reading, not acting, just speaking from a place no script could reach. "6 months ago, I wrote a letter to someone I hadn't seen in years. He was my high school art teacher, Mr. Alton. He was the first person who told me I had something more than just being good at drawing or acting. He said I had presence. I didn't know what that meant back then. I thought it was just a nice thing to say. But later, when I started acting, I realized he'd seen something in me I hadn't seen in myself, a kind of calmness, a space where other people could feel something." The audience was silent now, the crew not moving. Johnny's hands shook a little. I wrote to thank him, not because I'd become famous, but because I'd learned what it means to see people, to sit with their pain without trying to fix it, to just be there. That's what he did for me when I was 17, lost and pretending I wasn't. He paused, but the letter came back. Returned to sender. He died a year before. I never knew. Jimmy's smile was gone, his eyes wide and open. Johnny continued. I came here to talk about a movie, but I think I really came to say, if there's someone who saw you before you saw yourself, and you haven't told them what that meant, don't wait. Sometimes the only stage you get is the one you're sitting on right now. He folded the letter and put it on the desk. Jimmy let out a breath, shocked, his hand automatically covering the letter as if to protect it. The audience didn't clap. It wasn't that kind of moment. Jimmy turned to the camera, then looked down at the letter, breaking every rule of late-night TV. He leaned forward and said, "We're going to take a break. I need a minute." The screen went black. The studio was quiet after the commercial break. No band music, no rapid-fire jokes. The energy in Studio 6B, once electric, now hummed with quiet respect. The cameras rolled, but the script didn't matter anymore. How do you go back to comedy after a moment so raw, so human? Johnny stayed in the guest chair, calm but clearly moved. He hadn't meant to change the show's mood. He'd thought about sharing the letter, but in that moment, under the soft lights, he'd felt the heaviness of carrying it alone. Jimmy came back, his usual bouncy energy softened by something deeper. He stared at the letter on the desk, now a fragile treasure between them. The silence went on, but it wasn't awkward. It was sacred. The audience sat still, the crew not moving. Finally, Jimmy spoke, not with a question, but with openness. "Do you ever think," he said, "that maybe these people who shape us, they already knew what they meant to us, even if we never said it?" Johnny nodded, his eyes distant. "I hope so. Sometimes we don't realize the power of just being there, especially when someone's not sure of their own worth. The people who save us don't always know they're doing it." Jimmy leaned back, fingers pressed together, voice soft. "There was a teacher, 8th grade, Mr. Delgado. He told me I was funny, that I could do something with it. I thought he was crazy. I was just the kid goofing off in class, but he saw something." Johnny smiled slightly. "That's their magic. They see through the noise." Then, in a moment that would be watched again and again for years, Jimmy reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a worn notebook. His personal one, not a prop. He flipped to a page, tore it out and wrote something. He folded it and set it next to Johnny's letter. "You said the only stage we get is the one we're on right now," Jimmy said. "So I'm saying this now too." 2 folded papers sat on the desk, one unsent, one just written. Between them, decades of gratitude and silence. The footage aired without any cuts, despite producers worrying that it was too heavy for late night. Jimmy insisted, "This is the only part that matters tonight." Within 24 hours, the clip had been shared 20 million times. Not for shock, but because it touched people's hearts. People didn't just watch it, they felt it. Social media became a place for remembering, with hashtags like "Your letter to say thank you" and "Tarn thistagwesiton." Thousands posted letters to mentors, teachers, strangers who'd shown kindness at important moments. Some were old, never mailed. Others were raw, written right then. Johnny stayed quiet, avoiding interviews, but answering 2 handwritten letters sent through his agency. One from a woman in Detroit who'd lost her mother and wrote about a nurse who stayed by her side, and one from a teen in Dublin who said he understood presence after watching the show. Johnny wrote back, short but personal. Jimmy opened the next week's show with a tribute, holding a photo of his 8th grade classroom. "Mr. Delgado, if you're watching, thank you. I made it because you saw me first." The moment spread outward. Teachers got emails from former students, nursing homes got flowers. A single TV moment had opened everyone's hearts. 19 days later, Thomas Alton got on a late-night flight from Chicago to New York. He moved slowly, not because of age, but because of quiet tiredness. His old jacket was worn, his leather bag scuffed. Once a high school art teacher, Thomas had seen his classroom as a place for connection, not just teaching. He ended every class with, "What did you feel today?" Believing emotion helped memory stick. Retired and widowed, Thomas lived simply in Evanston, volunteering at a library and wondering if his years teaching had mattered. He didn't own a smartphone, didn't watch streaming TV. But at a bookstore cafe, a former student, now a writer, showed him a video of Johnny Depp reading a letter to Mr. Alton. Thomas froze, the words hitting like a discovery. He remembered Johnny, not for fame, but for his quietness, a a deep calmness at 17. 2 days later, he flew to New York, not expecting to meet Johnny, but feeling called to respond. That night, Johnny was at a small event at the New York Public Library, reading from Still Life. Thomas sat in row 3, holding a letter he'd written that morning. When someone asked about the letter from the show, Johnny said, "I didn't find him, but I like..." A hand rose from row 3. Thomas stood, voice steady. "I heard it." Johnny's face softened with recognition. "You're..." he began. Thomas nodded. "I'm the man who told you your quietness was presence. I never forgot you." Johnny stepped down and they met in the aisle, hugging as a room let out its breath. No cameras, no fanfare, just two people bridging decades. "I carried that letter a long time," Johnny said. "It helped me become who I am." Thomas handed him a note. "Now it's your turn to keep reminding others who they are." The moment sparked a flood of letters at the library, addressed not to Johnny or Thomas, but to teachers, mentors, strangers who'd shaped lives. Librarian Lorraine Brackner created the letter wall, a bulletin board display labelled "Gratitude Spoken Before It's Too Late." Letters poured in on napkins, postcards, receipts, each a lifeline. One read, "To the janitor who left an apple on my desk, you made me feel seen." Another, "To my coach, I'm a better man because of you." Johnny returned to Los Angeles, staying quiet, but getting a photo of the letter wall from Lorraine. He kept it in a notebook of meaningful words. Weeks later, he visited the library, reading the letters slowly. One stopped him. "To the man who read his regrets on the stage, you gave me permission to speak. Because of you, I called my father and he answered." Johnny asked to add something. That night, he placed his original letter in a glass case, a sign reading, "Read aloud before it was too late." The letter wall became a place people traveled to see. Teachers, veterans, and families. A permanent collection of gratitude. Behind the letter wall, a storage room became the echo room, a space for quiet thinking. A bench, a lamp, a jar, pens, and a note. Write it down. Leave it or take it, but speak it. People stayed, leaving folded messages or simply sitting. One man wrote, "I forgive you," and left standing taller. A woman wrote weekly, taking her letters, but staying to listen to the silence. Johnny visited again, leaving a note, "To the ones we still carry forward." Lorraine added it to a folder marked "Messages Return." The Echo Room became a movement, hosted in libraries, schools, and shelters worldwide. None had Johnny's name on them. They were about humanity. Months later, Johnny got a letter from Thomas. "You wrote to me. I hear you now, and I'm proud of you." He returned to the library one last time, leaving a cedar box of letters inspired by the story. "It's yours now," he told Lorraine. In the Echo Room, he left a final note. "If you're holding a thank you, speak it. Time doesn't wait, but love remembers." The letter wall and Echo Room spread around the world, a monument to quiet kindnesses. Johnny faded from the spotlight, known not for movies, but for a legacy of presence. If asked what would change everything, he'd say, "Not the letter I wrote, but the moment I read it aloud." Truth demands we offer it. Even if our voice breaks, someone's always listening. And sometimes the final thank you arrives when someone answers.